Well, things are beginning to crystallize, I think, in this thing called the presidential race.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
And I'll tell you, establishment Republicans aren't liking the way it's crystallizing, that's for sure. We'll talk about it all this evening. We are going to dedicate the entire program to trying to break that down with the good professor from Brown University's Taubman Institute, Professor Jim Morone, who's no stranger to the broadcast. He's a colorful guy, and he's got a lot of interesting thoughts. He just finished his poll, executive summary of Rhode Island. It's all Hill and it's all Donald, and that's all we got to say about that. But the rest of the country is really the concern, and Super Tuesday was such a big deal. So let's go to the rundown for just a second. And rather than going boom, 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 and me opining like I do most nights, these are just some of the concepts that we're going to go through. Yeah, unifier Trump, give me a break, but that was his big thing last night. Rubio's terrible Tuesday, even though he thinks it was a good one. So that's called spin. That's the timeline that they have to take the Donald out. And frankly, I think it's a lot less than that. You know, clearly Hillary is on the move right now, and Bernie's got to try to figure this whole thing out. So that's really kind of where we'll be as we discuss this tonight. We always like your thoughts too. You can always feed back to us. In the meantime, let's take a look at a summary of last night's activity.
Good Wednesday morning. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump have a little more pep in their step, and hundreds of all-important delegates in their columns thanks to Super Tuesday.
This country belongs to all of us, not just those at the top, not just to people who look one way, worship one way, or even think one way.
Hillary Clinton pivoted in her Super Tuesday speech, swiping at Donald Trump. True to form, he returned the favor.
I am a unifier. Once we get all of this finished, I'm going to go after one person. That's Hillary Clinton, on the assumption she's allowed to run.
Trump and Clinton dominated their party's contest, scooping up the major wins and delegates of the night. But their competitors scored a handful of victories.
But we are the only campaign that has beaten Donald Trump once, twice, 3 times.
2 weeks from tonight, right here in Florida, we are going to send a message loud and clear that the party of Lincoln and Reagan and the presidency of the United States will never be held by a con artist.
Bernie Sanders easily won Vermont and promised not to give up.
Our message is resonating, and the people, when we stand together, will be victorious.
States like Florida, North Carolina, Illinois, they all have a lot of delegates, and in the next 2 weeks, they're going to be voting. Experts say that Hillary Clinton could amass an overwhelming lead if she has more of these blowout victories. Meanwhile, Trump does have a lead in the delegates, but it's being diluted because of the crowded field.
You know, that analysis is an interesting one. Professor Morone is here. Nice to see you again, my
friend.
friend.
Great to be back.
This notion about a unifier Trump is cracking me up. But just a thought on that report. I actually think that Donald Trump had a big night last night in a different way. He may not have had the kind of actual voter numbers he was looking for across the board. But up until Carson's news, which we'll get to from this afternoon, everybody in getting their own piece of the delegates is only clogging up the thing anyway.
Exactly.
So I mean, he's the more traffic in front of him, the better off it is anyway.
Absolutely. If you wanted to write a scenario that's good for Donald Trump and bad for the establishment, you have Trump losing in Texas. That leaves Cruz in. Cruz says everybody get out. Rubio just enough. He's not going anywhere, so they keep splitting the vote.
Right.
They keep attacking one another. This is the establishment's nightmare scenario. Couldn't have gone worse.
And there is no smoke-filled room where they can pull them all together, because they all represent kind of different factions of what Republicanism is, and then there's the Donald who's off the charts, and so there's no consensus. Although we should say, Dr. Carson, just before our production for this evening, he sent out on a Facebook post that he is not showing up at the Fox debate tomorrow night. He's got a Friday press conference he's doing to explain what his work will be now that there is no path to victory. So he's out.
He got the message, which I wasn't sure he would. So he's out. Probably helps Cruz a little bit. Not all that big a wave. You know what's interesting about Trump the unifier? This Republican Party is a party that Ronald Reagan put together, right, with various factions. What Trump is doing is he's Never mind the mainstream Republicans, never mind the evangelicals. He's taking the group that Ronald Reagan brought into the party, the old blue-collar Democrats, seizing them and saying, you don't want to be part of this party anymore, I'm coming with you. And the old party elites who loved having those guys voting with them are beside themselves.
You know, it's interesting. I don't think he's as smart as you think he is. I think he's just flying by the seat of his pants, and it's all kind of coming together with kind of a right place, right time. Laura, can we run the unifying commentary, which I almost fell over last night?
I think, honestly, we've done something that almost nobody thought could be done, and I'm very proud of it. And I just want to leave you with this. I am a unifier. I would love to see the Republican Party and everybody get together and unify. And when we unify, there's nobody that's going to beat us.
He's full of it.
Two possibilities. One, he's full of it, that he's going to be a disaster for the Republicans. That's what the Democrats are hoping. But Dan, we've been sitting here saying, the guy, political gravity is going to kick in at some point. The guy's full of hot air. He's going to blow up.
Well, that's not happening.
When's it happening?
Well, I don't know whether the blow-up's going to happen. But my point is that right now, he doesn't need a unification process right now.
No.
He needs the pipe clogged.
Divide and conquer.
Kasich gets out. That's better for the establishment. I mean, if I had to pick a candidate, it'd be Kasich. But Kasich waiting for Ohio and to try to thread some needle by winning Ohio, something he may not be able to do anyway, and then hoping for some brokered contested convention where he could be the consensus pick because he's been the politest guy at the table, that's a heck of a fantasy he's got rolling right now.
Got to do better than second in Vermont to make that fantasy come true. He's showing no strength except to be a distant second here and there. He's been effective at knocking Rubio aside. That's basically been his contribution.
Which is why the Rubio people ought to be on the horn with him saying, come on, brother. You know, it seems to me that the only other guy you want out is Kasich to kind of, maybe not from a data point of view, but just to clear the deck a little bit. And Rubio takes one more shot at Florida where he's down 15, 20 points.
He seems really bad at interacting with other candidates. So he makes a call to Chris Christie, and he says, you've got a great future ahead of you. Chris Christie is furious. He just leaves a message, doesn't even get through. Christie's 10 years older. He doesn't want to hear from some young punk he's got a great future ahead of him.
Visceral reaction to Rubio. You know, he hates him.
He does.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, putting up with standing behind Trump, blinking and being the object of scorn across the nation, that was tough.
Yeah, I wonder how he feels about that.
The end of his career as a mainstream Republican, I think, probably.
Let's run this. This is kind of a reaction, an establishment reaction to Trump's momentum right now.
If winner took all, this thing is over.
Donald Trump won big on Super Tuesday. The billionaire scored 7 victories. Ted Cruz won 3 states, including his home state of Texas. And Marco Rubio won his first state, Minnesota.
And when we unify, there's nobody that's going to beat us.
Trump talked about uniting the party, but his ascent is doing anything but.
If Donald Trump wins the Republican nomination, it will split the Republican Party, and it will basically, I think, split the conservative movement.
What I see is a demagogue, somebody that has solutions that will never work.
I talked to Republican leaders yesterday who said we've got to figure out some way to stop Donald Trump from getting to the magic number.
I've never seen anything like this in my life.
No, I don't think there has been anything like this. Maybe the George McGovern takeover in 1972? That's not an analogy that would give much comfort to the Republicans. Maybe the Goldwater takeover in 1964.
Yet these guys were established career pals. This guy's the non-career pal. This guy's the guy from Pluto who throws his money, his fame, and his reality television persona around and has completely turned the world on an axis.
So is it just Trump? Is it just this one exception? Or has the media world so changed that our politics is in reality show land? Is he the first in a long series?
What's your answer?
My answer is that the old Republican coalition just isn't holding together anymore. Plus the new media, and you got a really talented guy coming in, and he is talented at keeping the media's attention on him. He's just blowing up the party. I think the party leaders are right. They're in trouble.
I don't see how they survive this one. Mitt Romney is supposed to speak tomorrow. Think about that. We'll pause. We'll come back. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Rubio.
Rubio, yeah.
Rubio had a terrible Tuesday. He doesn't know it, though. Stay with us.
Who'd you vote for?
I voted for Marco Rubio. What an incredible honor to be able to vote for myself today here in the place where I started my career in West Miami. Literally standing right outside in this sidewalk is where my career began in elected office. So it's an incredible privilege and honor to be able to vote for myself for president.
Yeah, it might be the last time he gets a chance to do that.
Bad day for Rubio. I mean, he was the real establishment favorite. It seemed like he had a strategy. Get down in the gutter with Donald. They actually started carrying his speeches live. It sounded like it was working. And here's the result. Third, second. Third, second. First.
He doesn't think so. Laura, play the tape, the Rubio shot. He thinks he's getting there.
And in just 5 days, we have seen the impact it is having all across the country. We are seeing in state after state, he loves to talk about polls, we are seeing in state after state his numbers coming down, our numbers going up. And 2 weeks from tonight, right here in Florida, we are going to send a message loud and clear. We are going to send the message that the party of Lincoln and Reagan and the presidency of the United States will never be held by a con artist.
You know, you've got the data. He's talking about more or less ever since he's gone rogue on Trump. Yeah.
No, and what he's hearing is, hey, you got the late deciders in Virginia. He is getting the late deciders because people who are not going with Trump, they're not going with Trump. But that is a remarkable presentation of a dream. He got really wiped out, and that's, I mean, he's no longer a solution. Now, very tiny caveat, will he start doing better when we get to the Midwestern states? But he's lost. He didn't even come in second in the Northeast. He lost in the Deep South. He didn't even come second in most of the Deep South states.
Virginia should have been the place, if any, that he would really, it fits his prototype, and he couldn't get it done there either.
He got the suburbs of D.C. The Republicans in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. went through him very strong.
You think the little Marco thing has been, he starts picking on Donald's orange face and little hands and really, talking about him almost bedwetting himself and the whole thing. And all of a sudden now, that what we expect from Donald and didn't expect from Rubio, we get from Rubio. And it's kind of like an act that seems not only desperate, but he's not suited for it.
I agree. I think he came on as a charismatic Latino Republican. And to suddenly get into the gutter, it reinforces the story that he'll do whatever. He's an empty suit. He gets nervous, he repeats himself. He gets told, no, you're being too high-minded, get down in the gutter. He gets down in the gutter. He's with the Gang of Seven for immigration reform. Then it doesn't look like immigration reform is going anywhere. He switches sides. It fits a narrative.
I would have thought, and I said this at the first debate, which seems like 20 years ago.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
That it was the establishment's objective, or should have been, to pile on Donald early, beat the tar out of him, never let him get up, get some breathing room, and get out of the gate. Now, he's the only one doing it. I mean, Cruz is doing it. We'll play some of that in a second. But now he's playing a role that he's not suited for, characterizing himself in a way that he never thought he would have to do. He's 11 feet out on a 10-foot board, and he's fledgling and he's flailing. And how in heaven's name did it turn that the Donald, for many, would look like he comports himself better?
Yes.
How is that possible?
And the old reality, the guy who does the attacking ends up with as much mud as the guy who's being attacked. So Marco goes down. It always hurts you when you go down.
But when you say that, you know what it reminds me of? Sports analogies. How many times do you hear coaches talk about playing your own game and not letting the opposition, if you're not a fast break basketball team, then you don't want to get running up and down the floor. Donald Trump got Rubio running up and down the floor.
Who was the governor?
And he kicks the ball away.
Who was the governor of Rhode Island who used to say, don't get into a pissing contest with a skunk? It's just you're not going to win.
No, it's no. Is that what? Well, Cianci, God rest his soul, used to talk about not getting into a brawl with the newspaper. You never get into a fight with the guy that's got the ton of ink or whatever.
Yeah, but
I know, we'll have to look that. We'll have to look that one up.
But this looks terrible for Rubio. He's not suited for this job.
Well, let's talk about the other guy. Ted Cruz, more or less, was asking for a prayerful consensus for everyone to kind of come together, except and get out, except for him. Here's Ted.
As long as the field remains divided, Donald Trump's path to the nomination remains more likely. And that would be a disaster for Republicans, for conservatives, and for the nation. And after tonight, we have seen that our campaign is the only campaign that has beaten, that can beat, and that will beat Donald Trump.
The irony of this, here's the alternative guy who the establishment might hate worse.
There's a big debate. Who do you hate worse in Washington? If you're on K Street, Trump, you're a lobbyist, you can make a deal with Trump. But if you're in Congress, you take Trump over, Cruz will just drive you crazy. This Puritan coming in, and does he really have a shot? Now, he got a lot of delegates, but he's
and he's won 3 states now.
He has got the Santorum vote all locked up. We know that's not enough to win a nomination. It's going to look good in the South. It's going to look good among evangelicals. Carson getting out helps him, but the Santorum vote just isn't enough to get there.
When we refer to this establishment that can't stand Cruz, is freaking out about Donald, is most likely disappointed in the execution of Marco Rubio, and would probably like to see John Kasich win, but knows he can't. Well, who are they? Mitt Romney is going to be speaking tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see if he actually endorses Rubio. But the term establishment has become, a negative term.
Right.
Is it necessarily a negative term? There's an establishment in the Democratic Party, by the way.
And
we'll talk about that next
It tells
segment.
us something about where we've gotten to. You need party leaders. You need people to actually lead.
Or you have anarchy.
Or you have this. You have what you've got in the Republican Party. Anarchy, chaos, fear, loathing, the 4 horsemen of the primaries.
But the term establishment,
it's an overlapping group of people who've got enormous wealth. They, under some circumstances, have power, but they can't affect a process like this. It's not like there's a smoke-filled room anywhere, as you've said. There's not a smoke-filled room where they can make a decision and have anybody listen. That convention is going to be full of screaming people who've either supporting Cruz or supporting Trump.
well, at the end of the day, what's your projection? Because I want to talk about the Democrats next. At the end of the day, do you think we're going to have a brokered convention? Donald comes short of 1237 and then all heck breaks loose?
All political scientists and all pundits...
And brokered, by the way, is the wrong term. Contested. Because no one's going to broker this thing at all.
Contested, with knowing you've got to get... Because there's a car show at the same convention hall starting on Monday, so you've got to decide this. Staying up all night, voting again and again. Oh, it would be so great. I would give... Well, not a pinky, but I'd give a lot to see it. Not going to happen. Trump's going to have the delegates. That would be my prediction.
All right. When we come back, Hillary's starting to take off. Stay with us.
After her big Super Tuesday wins, Hillary Clinton acknowledged the hard work ahead as she took swipes at the Republican frontrunner.
That work is not to make America great again. America never stopped being great.
Clinton won 7 Super Tuesday states to Bernie Sanders' 4, but Sanders says he is not going anywhere.
This is not a general election. It's not winner take all.
Clinton now has more than 40% of the delegates she needs for the Democratic nomination.
Less an FBI investigation convincing a Democratic Attorney General to prosecute. This thing is more or less game, set, match, right?
I think it's over. I think it's over. Bernie did a great job. Loved him. Very high positives. But it's over.
Loved him because of his politics?
Loved him because of his enthusiasm, his energy, and who doesn't love a Jewish grandfather who comes out there?
Who won't admit he's Jewish?
Oh, is that right?
No, he will.
Oh, well, Anyway, who doesn't
Look
like
at Lexi jumping in there. Oh, yeah, he admits it. No, he
Anyway.
doesn't like to talk about the idea that he's Jewish. He talks about being a Polish immigrant.
A guy from Brooklyn who's from Vermont who talks with his hands and white hair. I loved watching him. But the problem
But
is...
you, the political scientists, love the theater more than the science, it seems.
You can't win a Democratic Party nomination without the black vote. And the black vote is now breaking, 5-1 for Hillary. This is a party that in the last presidential election was 44% non-white. The non-white vote, the people who code themselves non-white, black, Latino, Asian, they're essential to the party.
Now, let's talk about establishment politics. Because it was the Black Congressional Caucus who, 10 days ago said, okay, we're back in the game here. This is who we're with, and it's Hillary Clinton. So when you talk about establishment politics, there's as much of it going on the Democratic side. Is it good for African Americans in this country? Shouldn't they be taking kind of a look-see? Isn't some of Bernie Sanders' message perhaps more palatable to the African Americans in this country rather than Hillary Clinton's? Or is there no distinction with the difference?
I don't think it's the message. I think Barack Obama gets elected, he's one of ours, and half the country starts bashing him. Hillary, his great opponent, says, no, I'm going to come work for you. I'm working in your administration. That act won her the black community, and that won her the Black Congressional Caucus.
I bet you a lot of people don't think of it that way. That's brilliant. It's not just being Secretary of State, it's that she joined the team.
Yes. She joined when so many people were bashing him, and in the black community, the bashing of Barack is a bashing of the black president, and Hillary joined the team.
Well, Bernie still,
and it saved her. It saved her.
Bernie still thinks he's got a revolution going here, right?
What I have said from day one in this campaign, and I suspect many of you were down on the lake with me when we announced on that beautiful day. What I have said is that this campaign is not just about electing a president, it is about making a political revolution.
Professor, when candidates start talking about it's not about winning, it's about the cause, that's when you know it's getting to be over.
Yeah, although you gotta say, Bernie rode that horse a long way. And both the two non-establishment candidates, Trump and Sanders, have created more waves. I mean, we can't remember any time when both parties were this shaken up. If I were sitting in Congress, I would think, hey, it's time to listen. You're getting a big, loud message that says people are pretty unhappy.
And maybe, not to throw in another subject, there's a pretty good contentious battle going on at the Supreme Court today for a potential outcome. You think maybe the Republicans ought to take a meeting with the president on a nominee just to show that they listen every once in a while?
Yeah, now you
can play rope-a-dope, but take the meeting.
Yeah. Mitch McConnell has been brilliant. You could only say that, brilliant, at tying the president up and
be careful what you're brilliant at.
He's won over and over again, but it's created this huge animosity we were just talking about. If I were him, I would be saying, oh, we'll look at each candidate on the merits.
There you go. Good analysis. That Hillary joining the team thing is going to be my theme for the radio tomorrow.
Great.
That was brilliant.
Oh, well, terrific.
Thanks, Jim. Professor Jim Morone from
always
Brown.
fun to be on the show.
Final word next. Stay with us. Half of the astronauts Kelly are back. Yes, Scott Kelly is back here in planet Earth. He came down in Kazakhstan, I think. A year away. Now that's an American hero. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.